don't know the first thing about me.
But I do. I know your first laugh, your first tears. I know your first breath. I'm your mother.
You've got to go after her, Gabrielle. Gotta save her from herself and the gods.
Eve was my favorite episode to play as Livia. Loved that episode. I loved the opening, the over-the-top drama of just pillaging the village. I loved that. That particular episode was with Mark Beasley, who loved the character of Livia too. We figured her out and we loved her at that point. And we felt there were no boundaries that she wouldn't cross. So we just pushed everyone we could think of.
Followers of Eli, don't forget to turn the other cheek.
And I loved it. It made her fantastic and powerful and, manipulative, a bit crazy. She was just great, and I loved her. But that was also, by that point, not only had I fully embraced her, but I finally figured out how to fight in a way that I thought was appropriate for the character and that worked for me, where I just loved it. And we do this incredible fight scene in the cathedral. I loved this fight. I thought it was so well choreographed. I thought it was beautiful, and it was just interesting. It was such an interesting fight, and just in the middle of this church and with everybody unveiling themselves, the whole thing, I loved it. And I get in there, and I was just into it, and I do this fight, and Mark goes, "Wow, that was fantastic. Okay, moving on." And I felt so empowered because that first week, poor Rick, who directed both Livia and Motherhood. I mean, he must have felt like, oh, dear God, how am I going to make this work? Because the first few days, my fighting, I'm sure, was just just horrible. But, once I finally got it, I just loved it. And that was my last chance to really have a big fight, which I'm so glad that I actually was able to do what I wanted to. Just really get it. It was fantastic.
Joxer's death, it came from two inspirations for Joxer's death. First of all, they had gone away. They came back. He's old Joxer now. He lived a good full life. We really honestly didn't know what we were going to do with old Joxer for a long time. But also, too, whenever we could take an opportunity to remind the audience that violence is really a dangerous thing to be around, we did. And this was one way we could take our little storybook violence and make it a little more real.
No! Dad! Can you help me?
The day that Joxer was killed off, the mood on the set was, it was rejoice. Everybody was so glad. No, just it was actually, I think for the first time, you could see it. Unfortunately, myself and Adrian, we had only just come into the family, so there wasn't that kind of attachment that Ted had with Renee and Lucy and Kevin Smith. And you could kind of see, once they actually shot the scene, what the mood was between them, kind of like, wow, we're going to lose a cast member. Ted's no longer going to be with us unless they bring him back, incorporating him in flashbacks or something along the lines. So you could definitely see more of a somber mood.
Auntie Gabrielle, welcome.
I've come here.
No, please. Let me. You thought if you could just talk to me, heart to heart, you could convince me that Xena wants only to help me. And if I could find it within myself to give her a chance, Mommy would make it all better.
Well, I can't answer the nature versus nurture argument for all mankind, but for Livia, I think it was a perfect equal. Her genes, I mean, half Xena and half Callisto. Oh my God, I mean, that right there breeds so much energy and anger and skill that, I mean, it's the perfect breeding ground for someone who's manipulative and angry. But equally, as much as nature played a part, I mean, if you look at the way the character was established, 25 years of being both abandoned by her mother and purely brought up as a warrior. That was how she got any attention or any love whatsoever, was purely based on her skill. How she became a commander, how she led her troops, her skill in fighting. That was absolutely everything that made Livia who she was.
The gods wanted you dead. Xena risked her life to save you. Does that mean anything to you?
It means she's as stupid as she is sentimental.
Your mother loves you.
Then why is she trying to destroy me?
Xena wants to protect you. She will not fight you.
Maybe she hasn't been properly motivated.
Livia is an interesting event in Xena's life, obviously. And one of the many things we wanted to explore was Livia is doing to Xena what Xena did to her own mother. The nightmare of having a daughter who's so horrible. And so there's sort of, you know, what goes around comes around kind of thing, you know. And also going back to the cycle of violence that Gabrielle was trying to break in the fourth season by her pacifism. Once again, it's being perpetuated by Livia. Livia would not have what you'd call good genes when it comes to living a well-ordered life, since she's sort of the combination of Gabrielle and Xena. And so, you know, she had a lot of the old nature-nurture argument. She had a lot of nature working against her.
Shut up and fight me!
I remember Rob asking me, so can you fight? And I said, I have no idea. Never tried, I have not a clue. And he goes, we've got stunt people for that. As long as you can handle the acting, then we won't worry. And I gotta say, both God bless him for saying that, because it took a bit of the pressure off of me, and there was such an amazing behind-the-scenes team of both doubles and stunt people and stand-ins and, you know, anybody to help make you look brilliant when you needed it. But at the same time, that first week was a learning experience. By the second episode, loved fighting, embraced it, and finally got it. But that first week, I'm sure I was embarrassing and horrible. I'm sure that it was tragic. And the thing that changed it was that there's that huge scene at the end of Livia in the arena with Xena, with the horses, the whole big battle. And that took a long time to film. And I was getting so frustrated because as a dancer, this is so specific, but it made a very big difference for me. The arena is covered in sand, several inches of sand, which is great for fighting because it protects you when you fall and all of that. As a dancer, I'm used to doing everything on my toes. So when I would spin, I would just literally like spin myself into the dirt and get stuck. It was horrible. It just made me an awful fighter. But I was doing a scene with Lucy's stunt double, and we were doing this particular sword fighting scene, and she missed and hit me in the leg. And I mean, she hit me. And I thought at that second, that wasn't so awful. if I can take it, so can they. And that changed everything. I was so proud. I had this great bruise. I felt, you know, strong and finally into it. And that changed everything because I was so afraid to hit somebody. I was so afraid I was going to hurt someone that I just wouldn't. I know that it must have looked horrible the first couple of days because although choreography-wise I picked stuff up quick, I wasn't fully committed to actually being that fighter in terms of the actual physical violence until I realized, you know what, we're all so protected. We all learn these fights inside and out. It's not as if it's a real blade. There's not going to be any true damage. And at that point, I just said, what am I doing? And I gave it my all.